This story I'm presenting you is yet another example of why giving slaps on the wrist to people who do not need them and should not get them is exactly one of the reasons why the justice system in America has become a complete and absolute circus. So in this picture, you see a man by the name of Justin Washington. He's 25 years of age, and he was initially put in jail when he got accused of violating his teenage relative, or one of his teenage relatives. They didn't specify what relative it was. They didn't specify if it was a sister or a cousin or whatever the case may be. They just said it was a teenage relative. Then he got a sweetheart plea deal from the district attorney. And after that, he went on to violate 5 other people within a month after he got the deal. So now he's back in court. I think they need to fire that district attorney, which name I'm going to reveal as I read this article. A man accused of violating his teenage relative secured a sweetheart plea deal from Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, and then went on to allegedly terrorize 5 people in the Bronx just a month later. Justin Washington, age 25, was promised a plum 30-day jail sentence along with 5 years of probation after he agreed in August to plead down to a charge of coercion in his Manhattan violation case. But just a week before he was set to be sentenced Wednesday, Washington allegedly went on a sex crime spree, attacking 4 women and a man near the homeless shelter where he was living in the Bronx. I've actually heard stories about those homeless shelters and the type of stuff that be going on in those shelters. So when they said that, I'm not surprised. After finding out about the September 15th arrest, prosecutors with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office said they were reconsidering the sentence recommended with the plea deal, which some cops said should never have been offered in the first place. How does a man who violates an innocent teenage girl walk the streets to sexually attack 5 more innocent people, including a homeless woman? One Manhattan cop fumed. Another police source scoffed at the 30-day sentence, pointing out that the original charge of violation Washington faced could have gotten him locked up for up to 25 years if convicted. That is a sweet deal. He went from R1, I'm going to just say R1, in facing 25 years in jail, which is hard time, to 30 days. What a joke. The second-degree coercion charge, Washington agreed to plead to, also carries a maximum penalty of 16 months to 4 years behind bars, much more than the 30 days offered by the DA. These were very traumatizing crimes, and he shouldn't have been allowed to walk the streets. What about the teenager? A police source said, adding, the DA should be coming up with programs for victims, not criminals. Emily Tuttle, a spokesperson for Bragg's office, defended the plea deal originally offered to Washington. Our experienced sex crimes prosecutors conducted a thorough investigation and were in regular contact with the survivor's family throughout this case. Based on the evidence, we determined that this was an appropriate plea to spare the young survivor from having to testify while holding Washington accountable for his conduct. But see, that's a double-edged sword, because now, because of that, he went out and terrorized 5 additional people. So I always feel that even if the victim doesn't want to testify, they had the evidence that he did it. If they don't want to testify for their own safety or because they don't want to face the person who did it, fine, but continue to go with the proceedings and give this person or whoever, and it doesn't have to just apply to him, just give them what they should rightfully be receiving. 30 days is a joke for what he did. Y'all just basically let a serial violator back out into the streets where he committed the act 5 additional times. So let's just hypothetically say they didn't want to get up on the stand and testify. What you're going to give him 30 more days? That's why people do not take this system seriously, because they don't take it seriously. As the investigation into this week's extremely disturbing allegations in the Bronx continues, we will determine whether to ask for a lengthier jail sentence. You got to ask for that. Just get it. It's pretty obvious that's where he needs to be. This guy does not need to be out on the street, because you see how he acts when he is on the street, like an animal, like a savage. Let him try that behind bars. I bet you he ain't going to get very far. Washington first landed behind bars on February 23rd after a teenage relative told police he violated her while the two were watching television together in East Harlem. He was hit with charges of first degree sexual abuse and forcible touching, and thrown in jail on a measly $25,000 cash bail or a $50,000 bond, despite prosecutors asking a judge to set a $100,000 bail in connection with the case. See, they lowballed it even then. What kind of system they got running up in New York? It must be ran by some clowns that escaped the circus. About 3 weeks later, prosecutors reduced Washington's charge to third degree after they determined they didn't have enough evidence, and he was sprung from jail when a judge agreed to reduce his bail to $12,000. Washington, who has no prior arrests, made all of his court appearances but last Thursday, less than a week before he was set to be sentenced. He allegedly used his last days as a free man to commit a string of attacks. The spree started at 8:20 a.m. when he sprawled into an 18-year-old man's window, put his hands in the man's underwear, and demanded money while gripping the victim's buttocks, prosecutors alleged. "Can I get $1, bro?" Washington allegedly asked the victim, who obliged the request. The creep refused to take the dollar bill, but then asked for it again before telling the victim, "Never mind, you're not understanding," and fleeing through the window. About 40 minutes later, Washington allegedly crept up the fire escape of a building on Davidson Avenue and began banging on the apartment window of a 26-year-old woman who was at home with her 9-month-old son at the time. When the woman opened her curtains, she saw Washington masturbating on her fire escape. Half an hour later, Washington allegedly burst into a 49-year-old woman's apartment in the same building and attempted to violate her. He pushed the woman down on the bed, pulled up her nightgown, climbed on top of her, and masturbated as he asked, "Can I get $1?" As the sicko pushed the woman's legs apart and smelled them, she bit his hand, scratched him, and then whacked him in the head with a hammer. 15 minutes later, Washington went to an apartment on the Aqueduct Avenue, slipped his hand through a woman's bathroom window, stole her underwear, and then began masturbating. The disturbing rampage ended about 5 minutes later when Washington allegedly found his final victim, a homeless woman who was sleeping in the lobby of an Aqueduct Avenue building. He was caught on surveillance footage, molesting the woman, pulling down her pants, touching her buttocks, and masturbating. The 26-year-old woman who caught Washington allegedly masturbating on her fire escape said Thursday the incident left her shaken up, but Bragg's decision to give him a plea deal before it happened is just part of the Big Apple life these days. "I'm not surprised that he was out on the streets," she told the Post. "Isn't that what they do?" The NYPD's Bronx warrant squad picked up Washington 2 days later at a homeless shelter on Phelan Place and hit him with a slew of charges, including attempted R-word, burglary, forcible touching, and sexually motivated felony. Prosecutors with the Bronx District Attorney Office asked the court to remand him into custody or set a $500,000 cash bail or $1.5 million bond in the case. The justice ultimately set a $50,000 cash bail or a $150,000 bond and sent Washington back to Rikers Island. The case will be presented to a grand jury this week. During his hearing in the Manhattan case on Wednesday, where he began to set up the wrist slap sentence for the alleged February violation, prosecutors asked Judge Lori Peterson for an adjournment, citing the string of attacks in the Bronx. "We believe the defendant has violated the terms of his plea agreement that he made back in August, and we're requesting the defendant to be remanded and the case be adjourned for sentencing until further information from the Bronx," Assistant District Attorney Courtney Groves said during the hearing. The judge agreed and adjourned the case until September 28th. Washington also wouldn't have had to register as a sex offender under the plea agreement, one police officer pointed out, while noting the cushy agreement failed to deter Washington from allegedly committing more crimes. I understand that they talked to the victim's family, but what about the rest of the citizens of New York who could become Mr. Washington's victims in the future, like those innocent 5 people in the Bronx? If the district attorney didn't give him this deal, they would not have been sexually assaulted. Adam Conta, Washington's court-appointed attorney in his Manhattan case, said he was waiting to review the evidence on the Bronx attacks, which he later said are extremely serious allegations. "We have a system that works where everyone is innocent until proven guilty," Conta told the Post by phone, while declining to say if his client has any mental health issues. "Right now, there's not enough evidence in the Bronx to just know if this was or wasn't Justin." He said the previous plea deal prosecutors offered Justin was appropriate considering his age and the fact that he has no prior criminal record. Mr. Washington's earlier plea deal without context is convenient fodder to attack Alvin Bragg in the comment section, but to conflate it with the charges the defendant faces now is a mistake. In reality, The sex crimes unit in the earlier case considered a multitude of mitigating factors, including the fact that Mr. Washington was a 25-year-old with no prior record, and made a just determination. That was a lot to digest. I didn't even know it was going to go that deep, but I'm kind of glad that it did, so we can get an idea of who this guy is. Like I said, this goes back to the DA giving him that slap on the wrist. And it seems to me this guy's literally been able to slide and continue to get slaps on the wrist. Like, he did all of that. It's like he could not wait to do all of what he did almost the second he got out, or before he was about to go in. He said, let me get one last hurrah. And that's what he did. But one thing I noticed, a commonality with all the people that he violated in some form or fashion, he masturbated everywhere he went. Everywhere. Like, every scenario that they gave ended with him masturbating somewhere. And they had like surveillance footage of this guy, like walking down the street or standing in a lobby. Like, so this is definitely him. So they can't mistake it and say, oh, we got the wrong guy. That's definitely him. And then I'm sure, DNA is will come back and get him as well. But a person like him doesn't even need a bond. And usually they give people bonds who they don't think is going to be a flight risk. I think he might actually be. They probably don't think he is because of the way he returned to basically doing the same exact thing. He might end up getting a title now because it all happened in the same area, which was in the Bronx. He didn't go to multiple areas in New York to do this. He stayed where it was convenient and familiar to him. But the guy is definitely sick. No doubt about it. And I highly doubt that he's going to do this when he goes where he goes, because they said they had to send him back to Rikers. I highly doubt he's going to pull that in Rikers. I know he ain't going to pull it up there. He'll try. I mean, he might try. I don't know. But he doesn't deserve to be on the outside. He has shown that he is not stable in the head to be amongst common society. He needs to be on some type of a lockdown for a few hours a day, by himself preferably. But I'm going to go ahead and end the video right here. Y'all let me know what you think down in the comments. Hit that subscribe button. Click the bell twice to be notified. And if for any reason the bell is not working, I upload my videos Premiere style. So that means you can click the notify me button on the thumbnail and you should receive the notification that way. The links will be down in the description. I will talk to you in the next one.